Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're now in general business and public session. Just remind all the participants that the public sessions will be recorded and will be posted on the Toronto Waterfront Toronto website. And Leon will be calling out 3-minute warning for the benefit of the presenters. So we have some very quick general business to do. First item is approval of the minutes. Is there any commentary or questions about the minutes that anyone on the panel would like to make? If not, can we have a motion to approve and a seconder from someone, please? Peter moves. Who's the seconder? Okay, Betsy, thank you. Okay, a review of the day's agenda. And is there any declaration of conflict of interest from anyone? No. Okay, Chris, I guess over to you or Leon in terms of the report back on the last month's project. So obviously we only have the one project on today, so.
All right. So this is the area 2B and 2C schematic design, which we reviewed with you. The 30% design package has been completed and circulated to the city, and I think we're waiting on comments back from them. And then we'll obviously take those on board and proceed to the next phase. So this project is, we hope, moving along. We are going to need more funding, though, to take it to the next level of design, and the process for getting that additional funding isn't entirely clear to us yet. In the absence, the city was hoping to make a capital request for the whole project this year. And I think that has been deferred, along with an additional capital request they want to make for the Eglinton Crosstown. So we may end up paused on this for a little while. I'm not sure. We're hoping not. So we'll give you an update when we know more. Next slide. Block 20 came for its final review in October and received a vote of full support. So they are done with the design process, and I think the panel was pretty supportive of that project. Love Park Clothes project is into construction now. Started excavation for some of the planting beds and for the pond. It's a kind of busy site out there. And the goal, I believe, is to have this finished sometime in the summer. And now that they've started, they appear to be moving fairly quickly. So hopefully we'll all get to see this thing open before the next cold season is upon us. There you see some of the pond perimeter being excavated. Next slide.
Yeah.
And Portland's flood protection, we've got a video of that to share with you.
I'm going to try to share this with audio. Please give me just 1 second. Okay, are you able to see the screen here?
Well, you look pretty good, Leon.
Yeah?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Okay. So it's a 5-minute video.
Okay.
Oh my God.
We're digging a new mouth for the Don River, right here at what is currently Polson Slip. You can see where we've started excavating along the dock wall. This area will eventually become Canoe Cove, a place for people to connect with the water. The white structure on the left is the Atlas Crane, a heritage structure that will be incorporated into the new park at the river's edge. For now, we're storing soil and material here, but in 2024, this is where Promontory Park will be. This is the site of the former Marine Terminal 35 building. You can see where we're reinforcing the dock wall and preparing to build a promenade along the water's edge. Here, we've filled in Cousins Key and restored a natural shoreline. Along the new shoreline, we've built 2 new coves to make habitat for fish and other wildlife. Recent surveys by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority found that the number of 3 native fish species has exploded since we created this new habitat.
Yeah, this is 3 species that haven't been seen in the Inner Harbor in quite some time.
Now we're traveling east
Wow.
over the Keating Channel, currently the Don River's only outlet into Lake Ontario. The new alignment of Cherry Street is currently under construction. We're piling soil on top of the future road to compress it, a process called surcharging, and building new utilities that connect under the Keating Channel. We're also building future stormwater management infrastructure here. This is the sediment and debris management area, an important part of our design for flood protection. In winter 2022, we'll start excavation here to widen the Don River. We'll rebuild the Lakeshore Bridge and widen it, part of the design to add more space for people on bikes and foot along Lakeshore Boulevard East. The first step in this work was removing the ramps from the Gardiner Expressway to Lakeshore, part of the city's plans for rehabilitating the Eastern Gardiner. Now we're tracing the path of the future river valley. To date, we've excavated more than 911,000 cubic meters of soil from the river valley. That's more than 364 Olympic-sized swimming pools. We installed barriers to prevent contaminants from seeping into the new river. The Commissioner Street Bridge arrived in 2 halves over the summer. We held off on excavating the area under the bridge to make it easier to install. Here you can see it being unloaded from the barge it arrived on and driven into place on machines called self-propelled modular transporters. Now you can see the outline of the future river valley. We're creating the bottom and sides of the new river pathway by placing rocks, stones, and trees. Using sustainably harvested trees with their roots still attached allows us to create a riverbank that is naturally resistant to erosion during a major storm when flood waters would rush down the river. The rest of the time, it provides habitat for fish. The old fire hall in the Portlands is a designated heritage building. It was sitting in the way of a rebuilt Commissioner Street, so we moved it farther south. Once the new parks are built, the fire hall will sit in the entryway plaza and house public washrooms. We're back where we started, at Polson Slip. You can see the foundations for the Cherry Street South Bridge, which arrived at the beginning of December. Here are some photos showing how much has changed in the river valley since 2020. More exciting progress will happen in 2022. We'll start excavating the sediment and debris management area, planting greenery, and even flooding some sections of the new river valley. You'll be able to cross the new bridges along Cherry Street and Commissioner Street and look out over the future river valley directly. The Portlands. It's a game changer.
So I guess the video quality was a little low on that, but I hope you got some sense of it. I have to say, I really want to get the whole panel out there next spring when the weather's nice. Hopefully we're allowed to again. But this project, when you're out there, it really is a whole different scale. I find that even I did not fully appreciate the scale of this thing, even though I worked on it with many years in drawings. When you're out there, sort of unbelievable. It feels almost like a whole new planet. It is big, and it's also exciting to see all this work and I would say the level of craftsmanship, if that's not an odd term, that's being applied to creating this landscape. So I hope we can get you guys all out there in, May or whenever the snow stops, and you can really feel those drawings just coming to life. So anyway.
Fantastic.
That's amazing. Thank you very much for that. That even just looking at the video, your comment about scale really hits you. It's absolutely overwhelming. And I can't wait to get out there in the spring. So any other projects you want to share, Chris, or is that it?
I think that's it. Leon, you want to go through the agenda for next month?
Sure, yeah. For January, we are looking at a full agenda at the moment. This is still a draft, so 200 Queens Quay West, is scheduled to return for schematic design. Benway Bridge redesign will come back for the third review, detailed design. 178, 180 Queens Quay East, also detailed design. And PICCOR Urban Design Guidelines will come back for their second review at the draft plan stage. And there's also one item on the waiting list, which is Legacy Art Project.
Great. So it'll be a full day for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it for the general business.
That it? Okay. I guess I only have a couple of brief remarks to make, and then we'll commence the first project review. I think we wanted to announce publicly that Claude Cormier has decided to not stay on the panel. His personal decision. Chris had a good discussion with him. We are very sad about that because he made an invaluable contribution, and we will wish him well. Hopefully he can join us at a future meeting, whether that's February or March, and we can give him appropriate thanks and recognition. And by the way, some of you, I don't know if you can see this, I just got this book from Claude, whether you can see it, which is his latest publication, which is fantastic. It documents all his projects in Toronto, Montreal, and various other places. So I'm sure he will want to talk about that. And the title of Serious Fun is what I think of when I think of Claude. He's just a wonderful person. So we wish him well, and hopefully he can join us at a future meeting. Obviously, we are in the process of looking for a replacement for Claude, and interviews are being scheduled. So you'll hear more about that. Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything else about Claude or not.
Well, I mean, Claude's been an amazing member of the panel. He has served on the panel for many years. So I feel like he's done more than his duty. So I'm, got nothing but positive things and wishes for him in the future. And I understand the need to focus on other things in life at some point. So, we are starting to interview some replacement candidates, and hopefully we'll have someone on board by January or February.
Right.
I think it's really important to. I think it's really important to say thank you to him in person when we get the chance.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that when we finally do get together again, that there's an event, a dinner, and a thank you.
And I think we should have serious fun at that event for sure.
Yes,
serious fun.
Serious, very serious fun. Yeah. And on a very last personal comment, I just want to thank some of the members who actually wished me well. I actually turned 75 last week and celebrated that in Quebec and in Montreal. So I'm 75 and counting. So let's put it that way. So George, you're my inspiration.
Happy birthday, Paul.
Okay, let's move on to the review of the project, 545 Lakeshore Boulevard West. We're here for schematic design, so we will have, of course, a vote at the end. And I think Josh is going to introduce the project. There you are. You're going to introduce it, so it's all over to you, Josh.
Great, thank you. I will share my screen.
And is everyone able to see that?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Josh Hilbert, a development planner here at Waterfront Toronto, and welcome to the first and I believe only item on today's DRP agenda, being 545 Lakeshore Boulevard West. It's a site located at Lakeshore and Bathurst on the western central waterfront, and this is the project's second presentation to the panel, so it's here for schematic design review. The proponent is Canderel. Design team is Sweeney and Co-Architects, Foric and Ecover. And perhaps we could have the proponent teams introduce themselves to the panel. Just turn on your camera briefly and your mic and introduce yourself if you could.
Hello, I'm Dermot Sweeney. Nice to see everyone.
Good morning, panel and colleagues at Waterfront Toronto. My name is Scott Torrance. I'm the Senior Director, Landscape Architecture at Foric.
And hi, my name is Miguel Lopez. I'm with Ecovert and I'm a building performance analyst.
Morning, Barry Graziani, Graz Architects, part of the architectural team, Rob Lincoln.
Okay, back to you, Josh.
Thank you all. So for a bit of site context, the development site is located at the southeast corner of Lakeshore Boulevard West and Bathurst Street, outlined here in pink. The Gardner and Fort York lie to the north, and to the south is the Bathurst Key neighborhood. And highlighted here, some of the components of that neighborhood include an elementary school, community center, the malting silos, and Ireland Park. Transit-wise, the 509 streetcar passes by the site on both the Queens Quay West and the Bathurst frontage on its route from Union Station all the way to Exhibition Place. And for a quick review of the site and the proponent's earlier iteration of this proposal, the site is relatively large at almost 2 acres or 0.8 of a hectare and is known as Block BQ7 in the Bathurst Key District. The site is currently home to the historic Cross and Blackwell building, which was constructed in 1927 and is listed on the city's Heritage Registry since 1973, and its full designation is actually on today's City Council agenda. The southern half of the site is currently used as surface parking, which presents the last vacant development opportunity in the western waterfront. And as I mentioned in an earlier proposal for this site, it came before the panel in March of 2018, and that rezoning application proposed a mixed-use development consisting of a wrapped podium and 3 tower forms of 39, 15, and 10 stories. It also proposed a partial conservation of the Cross and Blackwell building with a significant vertical addition. That earlier proposal has now been revised somewhat significantly in some regards, following discussions with City of Toronto staff, Waterfront Toronto input, as well as with local residents. And in July of this year, 2021, a revised rezoning application was submitted, which now proposes full conservation of the Cross and Blackwell building, as well as a significant reduction in height and density from the previous proposal. Meetings have been held with city planning staff and the Bathurst Key Neighborhood Association recently, and a community consultation meeting was held this autumn in September. So the revised application now proposes 2 development blocks. The north block is proposed to house office uses in the fully preserved Cross and Blackwell building with the addition of 2 stories. And in the south block, they're proposing a residential building of 21 stories on the western portion and 13 stories on the eastern portion, both with retail space provided at grade. Also, a revised public realm plan has been submitted, and it now proposes a central courtyard, a pop space at the southwest corner of the site at Bathurst and Queens Quay, and an east-west pedestrian connection into the site from Bathurst, and another north-south pedestrian connection along the east side of the site. And here we have a brief summary of the project timeline. As I mentioned, in March 2018, that's when the first presentation was made to this panel. And then in October of that year, 2018, the first zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to the city. And in the intervening time, based on input from various parties, the project was rethought and redesigned, leading up to the July 2021 resubmission of the rezoning application. Then in September of this year, site plan applications were submitted, one for the residential component on the south block and another separate site plan application for the commercial and heritage component on the north block.
And just in November last month, there was a resubmission of the rezoning application with a few changes. And as I mentioned, a staff report recommending full designation of the heritage component is going to City Council later today. So looking ahead, we're anticipating a heritage alterations report going to Toronto Press Board in January next month, and a final report to council on the rezoning application is anticipated by April. And I will now hand off to Toronto Community Planner Sue McAlpin to speak to the planning context of the site. Go ahead, Sue.
Are you there, Sue?
Hi, I'm sorry. I must have been on mute. Hi, thank you very much, Josh. And I just want to provide a brief overview of the planning policies that apply to the site. This first map is an excerpt from the city's official plan, the parent plan, and it designates the site as mixed-use areas, which permits a wide range of uses, residential, commercial, retail, and open space, all of which are proposed with this application. Next slide. The site is also situated, as you know, within the Central Waterfront Secondary Plan, so it has additional policies. It is designated as an existing use areas in the Central Waterfront Secondary Plan, and so it is governed by the policies of the parent plan, so it is a mixed-use area. The secondary plan also includes many policies that support the conservation of our heritage, waterfront heritage resources, the creation of new parks and open spaces, and an enhanced public realm. And both the Lakeshore Boulevard and Queens Quay West are important waterfront streets, and the secondary plan identifies Bathurst Street as a key pedestrian link. So this site is very important from a public realm perspective. Next slide. There are also more specific official plan policies that apply to the Bathurst Quay neighborhood. There was a larger study undertaken a few years ago that resulted in an official plan amendment specifically for the Bathurst Quay neighborhood. The main feature of the official plan amendment included policies for the revitalization of the Canada Malting Silo site with a vision to create a community and cultural hub on that site, along with improvements to parks and open spaces and streetscapes throughout the neighborhood. And as a part of that initiative, there is a public realm and streetscape plan for the silo site and for Aaron Key. And the panel has been involved in reviewing that public realm plan that is being led by the Waterfront Secretariat. And through our review of this site, we want to ensure that the streetscapes and the public realm enhancements complement and add to those improvements that are planned to the south. Next slide. And this is an excerpt from the zoning bylaw with the site identified. It is within the Harborfront zoning bylaw, and it is zoned CR or commercial residential, which again permits a wide range of commercial, retail, residential, and open space uses. For this site, the height limit is currently 31 meters, and the overall gross floor area permitted is 21,000 square meters. And I just wanted to note that the current heritage building on the site is about 9,000 square meters. So the current zoning permits additional floor area than what we see on the site today. So that's my overview. If anyone has any questions, and I'll turn it back to Josh. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Sue. And this slide is a familiar one, just shows where this proposal is in the project review and approvals process. As I mentioned, the original rezoning application came before this panel in March of 2018, and it's since been redesigned and it's now here for stage 2 schematic design. And here we have a recap of the issues ID comments from the original rezoning application presentation to the panel in 2018. Some of your comments included, consider how this project fits into the Bathurst Quay neighborhood plan, get this building right, as it's the last vacant development site on Queens Quay West. The heritage hexagon piece of the building at the northeast corner should be the entrance to the complex. Respect the 25-meter tower separation and the building datum along Queens Quay West. The facade along Queens Quay should be powerful. This is an opportunity to bring life to the Queens Quay frontage. It's important to design good street edges. Consider reprioritizing all of the entrances. Investigate the public market concept further to determine the viability of the proposed size and how many people will likely cross Lakeshore Boulevard to get there. And finally, bring the aviation analysis regarding Billy Bishop Airport to the next review. And finally, areas for panel consideration, and these are from both city staff and Waterfront Toronto staff. With regard to the building design, does the architectural expression of the residential building successfully respond to the site context and frontages? That is, does it form a dialogue with the heritage building, have a relationship with Queens Quay and Bathurst Street, and do the volumes frame the courtyard? Has the ground floor been sufficiently animated along Queens Quay, Bathurst, and Lakeshore? Are the servicing and other vehicular requirements coordinated with the public realm? And focusing on the public realm, do the streetscape details, furniture, the pops at Queens Quay and Bathurst, the central courtyard, proposed lighting, and public art create a cohesive and interconnected experience for the site? And does the public realm successfully provide continuous and safe pedestrian movement, linking Lakeshore with Queens Quay along Bathurst and providing access into the buildings, the pops, and the courtyard? And that wraps up the intro. I will now hand off to the proponent team.
What is POPs?
Privately owned, publicly accessible spaces. So it's like a privately owned park space generally.
Okay, who's going to lead off? Is that you, Dermot, or?
Yeah, I think Dermot's going to key up the presentation, and Paul, I'll kick off the
Okay.
the
All right.
presentation. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, how do I share on here?
Dermot, there's a button just on the left-hand side of the red button in the top right corner. It's a little arrow pointing up.
Yep.
So
I'm
click
not
that.
allowed to. I've tried that, but I'm not allowed to use it. It says only meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me give you permission. Sorry. I apologize. Yeah. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Oh.
Well, we see something, but it's the wrong project.
Yeah, wrong project. It's excellent. Hang on. You've got me all messed up here.
He's two-timing us.
Got to have your morning coffee, Dermot.
I did. Okay. Can you see that?
Now we're still seeing George and Richmond here.
Okay, hang on.
Hey, Dermot. This is Faye here.
Can
If
you
you'd
put it
like,
up,
I can
Faye?
also share.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stop sharing.
Okay, Faye, let me just give you permission. Yeah. There you go.
Sorry. There's another Faye also joined. It's my desktop. Sorry. You have to give permission to the other Faye.
This is great. Technology. Fun.
Sorry, which is the other Faye? I think I found the desktop one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got it now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you see this?
Progress.
Yes.
There we
yes.
go.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Craig.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Craig Hunter, Hunter & Associates. We're the planning consultants working on behalf of Canderel. I'll kick things off. Josh and Sue have already given a fairly detailed overview, but I'll share my perspectives on the site and context. Next, please, Faye. As we were informed by the original 2018 original proposal where we presented a number of alternatives to the panel. The original application as submitted to the city was for a comprehensive redevelopment that kept only the heritage facades of the building on Bathurst and Lakeshore, introduced 3 building elements, 39, 16, and 10 stories, integrated with a market hall. And as Josh has already indicated to you, we gave direction, fairly clear direction from the panel on where you thought the site ought to go. Next, please. For the next 2 years, we worked very closely with city staff, particularly planning, urban design, and heritage, to comprehensively redesign the project. And last year, we initiated a series of discussions to refine things, which have 3 basic elements: conserving the heritage building on the north parcel and adaptively reusing it, redeveloping the parking lot with a mid-rise 8 to 13 story form, a single tower now on Bathurst Street of 21 stories, 412 units, and 2 levels of underground parking, and then focusing on enhancing the streetscapes and public realm on all key city frontages. Where we're at right now, Josh has indicated the timing, all accurate. I'd just like to reinforce that that this does have city planning and urban design and staff support, and we're very much pushing to get this, after all this effort, to City Council as quickly as we can in the new year. Next, please. The site itself, familiar with that, about a 1.8 acre site with the Rogers building on the north half of the site, the surface parking lot to the south. There are 2 vehicular driveways, the main one being on Lakeshore on the east side. There's also one on Bathurst Street, and notably very poor sidewalks and streetscape conditions along Queens Quay and Bathurst. On the right-hand side is the original Cross and Blackwell building from the 1920s, the food manufacturer with the original office and manufacturing building to the south. And it sat within a framework at Bathurst and Lakeshore, which was shared on the corner with Maple Leaf Stadium on the west side and the Loblaws Groceteria and warehouse on the north side of Lakeshore. Next, please. Various site photos for panel's consideration that just illustrate the site and features. I just draw your attention to the right-hand side. Given previous comments from the panel about potential relationships with 600 Queens Quay, which is the building to the east, there's notable grade changes along the site's boundaries between Lakeshore and Queens Quay that don't lend themselves well to a full integration. And on the lower right-hand side, you can see the very barren streetscape and public realm conditions that exist on this very prominent corner. Next, please. The immediate adjacent development and uses to the north, we have the recently constructed 37 and 41 story residential condominium buildings with the 7-story commercial office and retail space anchored by the new Loblaws within the former heritage facades. We worked on that project. To the east is the Queens Harbor condominiums, 2 11-story buildings on Queens Quay. To the immediate south is the Waterfront Neighborhood Center and School, the Martin Goodman Trail, and the LRT along Queens Quay for the Little Norway Park. And on the west side is the Atrium condominium, which is 16 stories, and the Esso just north of that on the corner of Lakeshore. Next, please. Sue went over this in more detail, but I think this was a key direction from the panel in 2018, is to learn from and find direction in the Bathurst Quay neighborhood plan and context. We very closely followed this with city staff. We've been monitoring the ongoing and significant public investment and capital projects that are coming after council's approval in 2019 of this plan with the Waterfront Secretariat and community. Notably, though, on the north side, I just draw the attention to the existing pattern of development. From the east, we generally have 11 or 12-story buildings, and on the west side, at the tip-top lofts, and just south of that, there's an existing 23-story condominium building called Queens West. So generally a 12 to 16-story height limit and pattern along development, punctuated with one tower that is at 23 stories, all private development located in the north side. And this is the last major private development site in Bathurst Key. Everything to the south is publicly owned or controlled, and it's going to be a really wonderful front door to the waterfront. Next, please. The site also sits within a confluence of different neighborhoods, which has changed a lot over the past 30 years. When the site's planning framework was put in place through Harbourfront, including the bylaws back in 1993, it definitely provided for a predominantly mid-rise direction, mostly residential along this portion of Queens Quay, with minimal direction for retailing through that. And then since then, the former Molson plant at Fleet Street has been redeveloped into the Fort York neighborhood. The railway lands west has been transformed into City Place, all predominantly tall buildings, and this prominent site sits at a very key corner within Bathurst Quay, where it meets the waterfront and the transitions from north to south. Next, please. Notably, the last 4 major developments in this area along Queens Quay and Lakeshore. On the north, on the upper portions you see to the east, this is at 350 and 390 Queens Quay West, what is Maple Leaf Quay. Approval for a 21-story building in between the 2 existing towers, and a recent proposal for a 21-story building between that and 410 Queens Quay, which is 16 stories today. To the lower portions to the north, we've seen that development at 500 Lakeshore, taller buildings, and then the Queens West condominiums that I referred to, which is generally an 8 to 9 story street wall with a 23-story tower behind the tip-top lofts. So pattern mostly of newer, taller buildings in the area, and we've taken all of these contextual features into the revised design concept that Dermot will now take you through. Thank you.
Great. Next, please. Again, these just reiterating some of the context photos in the area. The building itself is a gem. It's a jewel. The building on the corner, it's fantastic. One of the big moves that we have made since we last saw you, and many meetings with the city, I think is fundamental, and Craig talked about it. We decided to save the building in its entirety with a small addition on the roof of the existing building, which actually was a building in the past. There was a 4th floor on the top. So we're bringing that back and adding one other small piece on top. All around the context, I guess the most important one, and we're going to talk, Scott will talk a lot more about the public realm, but it's as Craig pointed out, not great. And of course, Lakeshore has been widened. You can see in the middle picture number 2, over time, leaving very little land between the Heritage Building and, of course, the curb. So we are going to talk about exactly how we deal with this all the way around. The good news is the corner, the upper left photo, will be, all of that will be retained, including as much green space and the existing trees at the hexagon at the entrance point. And the entrance will be maintained, and its floor levels will be maintained. There was, in the last scheme, we were going to drop that. So at the bottom right corner is also important. It is a condition that is currently fairly common along Queens Quay on the north side, where buildings sit within the sidewalks, sort of sea of asphalt and a lot of access points, very, very little retail. So I think we're going to really tackle the corner in a very, very different way. Next. So the basic partie is to hold on to the original building, separate it from the development completely, create a courtyard, as you see in green, in between the two, the new and the old building. You can see on the right in the axonometric is basically a partie that establishes a very strong street wall, a very strong presence along Queens Quay, activated all the way along with retail, which I'll talk about. And that is the lower portion, the street wall. Then we set back and have a little more fun above that street wall with the building set back with some interesting 2-story units, a lot of terraces, but generally much, much lower. So it's 13 stories in its totality. Along the street, it's 8 stories. And then at the corner, we're demarcating the corner with a very strong corner element which actually is the tower. It's now down to 21 stories. And that tower itself, again, establishes a very strong street wall along Bathurst, stepping up from Queens Quay, and allows us, again, to establish a very strong and animated public realm. Next, please. This is a section taken through the site, basically showing the existing office, and then the addition, that first addition on the office is actually reclaiming space that was up there for both meeting rooms, but also some mechanical equipment, which was then later removed and put out onto the roof. We're consolidating that into a new mechanical penthouse and bringing back that 4th level of office above grade. Then there's the courtyard, which is shown in green, and then the slimmer tower, or the slimmer lower portion of the building that comes out to Queens Quay. So, and then in the background is the tower element itself that defines the corner. The stats, I don't need to really go through that. Suffice it to say that the buildings is considerably smaller, a lot more retail on the street, less retail internalized, which was a comment that people had last time. So we've, and also increased the amenity space, increased the ground plane open to the public in terms of a through block connection and the courtyard, and much wider sidewalks. Next, please. Scott will talk quite a bit about the ground plane as well, but I think it's important here to show how we're dealing with this. We're bringing the buildings well back along Queens Quay from the property line. The current condition is a very narrow sidewalk with some sloped up asphalt and curbstones. So the parking lot itself will be removed, of course, to make way for this, and then we will widen the sidewalks all the way along. The wider sidewalks, it basically are 10 meters from curb to building, will allow for some patio type condition along the building face. You can see all the way along Queens Quay, save and except for the through block connection and a small entrance into the residential lobby. All of the balance of the space within the new building is retail and will engage with the street. The other thing that's important, working with the ratepayers in the neighborhood, it became very apparent that they wanted us to open up the corner and create a POPs on the corner. We've taken the building face back 11 meters more, and then brought in a space, the POP space is about 11 by 18. So we've recessed the corner and come up with a new structural way to deal with that, with the building above. So the corner's been opened up. The courtyard is going to be a very, very interesting space that will be shared by both the commercial uses in the heritage building and the residential uses. And then basically the balance of the site all the way around the heritage building has been maintained, opened up where we can. Again, I told you along Lakeshore it's very tight, but we are able to secure 6 meters from the building face to the curb. And we're hoping also, working with planning, urban design, and traffic, city transportation, to hopefully straighten out the curb along Bathurst and gain even more sidewalk at both the corner, but also further south along Bathurst. Generally, everything we can do in retail is being done. I believe we've also consolidated all the servicing. So access to ramps, loading bays for both, a new loading bay for the commercial building to get the trucks off the parking lot and out of the back. You can see that in white on the south side of the office building. That will be a new enclosed loading bay. Then there is the drive-through that goes from Queens Quay to Lakeshore. Scott will talk about this in more detail, but we have separated a clear passageway for pedestrians through the through block, and then allowed for traffic to come in and out to service the building. Next, please. Parking, we won't spend much time on this, but all of that parking is being moved to the south side. There is no interference with the existing heritage building and the additions being put on. Next, please. You can see here on the upper floors, the first floor up, which is on the left-hand side, gives access to a whole series of indoor amenities and an outdoor amenity terrace that overlook the courtyard. And that new courtyard down below, as per what was on the previous site plan drawing. That is a double height space, so we move up to the next floor on the right, and then we start to work our way into more consistent residential units with the plaza or the new pops on the corner opened up. Next, please. These are fairly typical floors with units. We're trying to maximize the number of units, of course, on the waterfront and with views to the water and the city, and of course the western views. And also, there's a number of units obviously facing into the courtyard itself. Next. This is a fairly typical floor on the left, but on the right, as we break above, let me talk to the one on the left a little bit. That first major setback allows us to do some very, very large terraces overlooking the lake and with city views. And it also gives us a chance to do some two-story units, some really interesting larger units facing the water with outdoor terraces. Then as we move up to the roof of the lower mid-rise building, we provide a roof garden overlooking the lake with a series of really interesting amenities and a pop-up amenities room on the right-hand side, and also access directly from the tower out onto the outdoor amenity overlooking the lake as well. Next. Then the tower itself is rather small on the corner, pulled back, and the floors above the upper floors are quite playful in terms of their exterior. There's a shifting of balconies, which we can talk about when we look from above, but you can see it in the roof plan as well. The walls keep shifting, the balconies are shifting, so they're open air, one over the other, and it gives a fairly interesting wave to the facade of the building and breaks it down as we get higher above a more rigorously defined base to the building. Next. Again, that's the section we talked about. So that's the tower in the background, residential, and then the office building. Next. This section going the other way, showing the taller component on Bathurst on your right, and on the left is the lower component as it frames the courtyard, and then the facade overlooking the courtyard. Next. This is the view from the lake, so the south elevation, essentially. So a very rigorous approach to the lower portions of the building, creating a very strong but dynamic facade that starts at the corner, moves towards to the east, and opens up at the corner, breaking down the facade and creating very large terraces. The building features on all of its sides, really, independent individual balconies, which allow us to go much deeper and allow us to also pick up extra hard or insulated wall on the one side. And it gives us a lot, as you move around the building, you will start to see more of the solid versus void and the rhythm between the two-story collected sort of grid and then a smaller, more defined grid in between. But it's fairly rigorous down below, and then up as we move above and get above that street line cornice, we start to break the facades down into a series of waves that are simply staggered so that we get balconies separated from balconies vertically and moving horizontally towards the city on this side, and of course moving back towards the north or south on the Bathurst side. The corner itself, similar in terms of its rigor, every second floor, the larger balconies, the undulation on the side breaking that down, but a very rigorous and solid corner at Bathurst and Queens Quay, which we think is a very important feature to denote the corner at Bathurst and Queens Quay. Next, please. This is the view looking at the west facade. Something important to point out, we're trying to take a look at acknowledging and in some ways establishing or reestablishing a very strong connection to the height of the Cross and Blackwell building. So we've taken those lower 4 floors and created a different material, possibly in masonry or porcelain or something that allows us to create a difference in the base and establish a cornice line, and then step back the building above slightly, and then reintroduce the white and dark grid above. Again, opening up to the corner as best we can, and around the corner, softening the edge at the northwest corner. And you can see above, again, the stagger of the balconies, and the play with the wave type approach up above, which will also include the penthouse at the top. Next, please. This is a view of the east facade relative to one of the nicer facades, unfortunately, of the Heritage Building, which is actually tucked away in the back, but that will all be opened up now and exposed to a pedestrian passageway along the east side of the site. And then you can see at the base, we've wrapped the retail as far north as we can and consolidated all of the services down below. Again, a very rigorous grid facade, independent individual balconies, angled slightly towards the lake with the walls, and then the breaking down of the facade above, again with the shift in balconies and plan as we step back to create independent sun-filled balconies. Okay, next one, please. This is a view now without any of the tower or any of the major components being built above the Cross and Blackwell building. The building itself, the new portion, sits well back. The addition on the top of the building is in the place where there was an addition, and then we've consolidated also the mechanical to pick up a little more space for the commercial. I think this is important to make the building more viable, the commercial building in the Heritage, and to sustain the building or keep the building in its current shape. We are actually adding a new core that will rationalize the interiors of the building and make it much more commercially viable. Okay, next, please. This is just a simple view at the corner. This is not the actual arched entranceway, just we fudged that in. We're doing research on it. There are components that will be brought back. It will be fully restored, and as will the stair out in front. But the view you can see down Bathurst Street, we're picking up that cornice all the way towards the corner and then stepping back the building above in the tower. Next, please. This is a view looking along Queen's Quay towards the corner. Again, establishing all of the public realm will have exposure to retail, save and except for a small entry point. You can see also on the right-hand side of the building, the public passage leading up to a new exposure, actually, of the Heritage facade to the east as we get to Lakeshore. Next, please. This is the view looking towards the northeast from the southwest. The pops on the corner, the open space, the building being pulled up, and we will continue to work on that structure. But again, all of this is now animated with street-related retail of good depth and different sizes. We think this will be an extremely attractive retail location, certainly in the food and beverage world, and hopefully we can get that commercial building up and leased fairly quickly or occupied, and we'll get this corner back brought to life. You can see here very clearly that the base of the building, be it the tower or the lower rise portion, are very established. We brought the building out to create that edge. We worked well with the city to come up with a street wall type condition, and then bring the building back and in a more playful fashion above, in both cases, at the tower and at the lower rise building. Okay, thank you. Scott, we'll take you around on the public realm. You're muted, Scott.
Sorry, everybody. Next slide, please. The new waterfront community. is at the heart of a number of downtown destinations, parks, and trails, with a significant number within a 5-minute walk of our site. The Bathurst frontage is a key pedestrian link to and from Billy Bishop's neighborhood airport. Next, please. New commercial space, as Dermot mentioned, fronting Bathurst and Queens Quay West will animate the public realm and provide continuity with the existing adjacent retail. Next, please. A key component of the central waterfront public realm are the distinctive red and gray granite pavers used on the north and south side of Queens Quay West. We are proposing to continue this material at our site as a way to bookend and connect to this materiality of the waterfront. Next, please. There are not only many parks and community facilities near our site, there's a diversity of programming: ornamental gardens, sports fields, play facilities, pet areas, skating, lawns, trees, a hard surface plaza, separated bike lanes, and the waterfront promenade itself. As such, our team looked for a public realm and open space that complement this diversity. Next, please. Public realm of 545 Lakeshore Boulevard West consists of wide tree-planted walks along Queens Quay West, Bathurst, and Lakeshore Boulevard frontages, with north-south and east-west mid-block connections, providing porosity through the site. At its heart, between the restored heritage commercial building and the new residential retail building, is a protected courtyard with ample seating and planting. Central waterfront red and gray pavers provide a connected ground plane through the site to support the open and invite connection to the Queens Quay public realm. Patio zones are provided along the retail frontages to animate the sidewalks, and privately owned, publicly accessible space is provided to open up the corner of Bathurst and Queens Quay and provide a focal point as part of the visitor experience of arrivals and departures from Billy Bishop Airport. The dashed line, as Dermot mentioned, along Bathurst indicates the potential future widening of the sidewalk through the removal of the lay-by and right turn lane, through which our team is in discussion with the city, and which provide even more space for pedestrians. The wind analysis contained in the appendix indicates we have comfortable areas for seating and all outdoor spaces. Next, please. Large canopy native trees are planted wherever we can to support the urban forest, provide shade, and complement the public realm. Existing mature trees are retained. However, the web of underground services and associated required horizontal and vertical offsets makes it impossible in some areas to plant trees, thus the gaps and alignment issues indicated in yellow. The building and vehicular movements do not provide space for tree planting along the north-south mid-block connection. Next, please. The Toronto Streetscape Manual mandates a continuation of the granite soldier course and concrete paving along Queens Quay West and Bathurst curbs. We have 2.4 meters to provide between the patio zone and tree planting along Bathurst to allow pedestrian separation from the street. Next, please. This view shows the extra space at the corner provided by the new POPs. Building spaces above allow for the inclusion of commissioned art on the facade and lighting to activate this outdoor space while minimizing interruption of pedestrian flow at the ground plane. Looking north, the public realm between the new street trees and the patio zone is shown, allowing pedestrian separation from Bathurst. The base of the building is all commercial retail space along both frontages. Next, please. A little further north on Bathurst, we can see the opening between the heritage building and the new residential retail building with the patio zone and seasonal planters in the foreground. The commercial space is occupied by a non-patio use, such as a retail shop, and the public realm will be open right up to the face of the building, allowing clear views and access to the window doors. Next, please. Arguably, the most important facade of the heritage building is the pavilion entrance facing northwest. Here, we're proposing to remove the low planter to open up this prominent corner. Next, please. Which you can see here. Along Lakeshore West, we are using tree planting to provide pedestrians with the opportunity to walk between the trees and the commercial facade while maintaining some space between the curb and the tree, continuing the typology east of our site. This also allows for some separation for the tree canopy from vehicles, as opposed to planting immediately along the curb face of this busy street. The grove of existing trees along the west and east side of our north side of the pavilion are maintained, with locally manufactured recycled composite benches providing seating. Next, please. Along Queens Quay West, a deep setback similar to the esplanade pictured provides space for tree planting, pedestrian movement, benches, and a patio zone. Next, please. The mid-block connection is curbless with continuation of the central waterfront granite pavers. Similar to the Scott Street example shown on the bottom left, lit bollards provide a protected space for pedestrians to use or move onto, free of vehicles. Next, please. So a clear sight line to Bathurst and the Heritage Commercial Building from Queens Quay West is provided along the north-south mid-block connection. Looking west, you can see the pedestrian space between the new tree planting and the patio zone along Queens Quay West. Next, please. The courtyard is designed as an oasis, protected from the lake and winds and with a strong character throughout the seasons, day and night, and providing a complementary experience with a variety of open spaces in the direct vicinity of the development. Raised planters and benches surround a sculptural natural rock focal point. Granite pavers provide a flexible space for different programming, from bistro tables and movable chairs for outdoor work that can be reorganized into theater-style seating for a performance space or for even an outdoor art show or exhibit. Next, please. Finding inspiration in a shady forest, we're proposing Blue Beach native understory trees, ferns, and evergreen Canada yew and other shade-tolerant plant species. Specimen and granite boulders, similar to those in the historic design public park on the right side of the page, provide a striking focal point and connection to nature year-round. Next, please. This view, looking west across the courtyard, shows the benches, planters, and portal to Bathurst Street. As Blue Beach are arborescent, they retain their dried leaves for the winter, providing visual interest and sound as wind moves through them. Next, please. Looking east in the courtyard, a small pet area adjacent to the side exit door and screened from view of the lobby by planting is provided. Irrigation is provided all planting using harvested water from a cistern. We are working with Linnaeus, a local supplier of full spectrum indoor and outdoor fixtures, to provide supplementary lighting to the plants in the courtyard. Next, please. And last slide here. In the evening, bollards, bench, wall, sconce, soffit, and pole lighting provide dark sky, energy efficient lighting to complement light from within the building to provide ambience and safety to the public realm. I will pass it over to Miguel to conclude with a summary on sustainability.
Thank you, Scott. So we can start this slide. So we did the energy model for both the residential and the commercial buildings. And in this graph, we can see the results of our model in the first row. So for the commercial side, we were able to get 151.8 total energy use intensity, 67 for TEDI, the thermal energy demand intensity, and 17.8 for GHGI, greenhouse gas intensity. So the next row shows the TGS version 3 tier 1 target, and the row after that shows the TGS version 3 tier 2 target. So right now we can see that we are currently meeting the TGS tier 1 target. And similarly for the residential, we are also in that band. We're meeting that TGS version 3 tier 1 target as well. So in the next slide, we can see some of the energy conservation measures that we have included into the design that helps us meet the TGS tier 1. So for the commercial side, we have the central ventilation unit with heat wheel recovery, underground unit cooling, central chill plant with a COP of 5.5 and magnetic bearings. So for the commercial, there's not. We just assume that the heritage walls have to remain. So that led us to have to ramp up that insulation for the roof, R40, and some double pane punch windows that were pretty thermally broken as well. For residential, we had the in-suite energy recovery ventilators, high efficiency condensing boiler, variable flow drive in chiller and the fans. For spandrel, we had an R18 back pan insulation, which helped out the external insulation We have a continuous roof insulation of R30. And we have a double glazed curtain wall system as well, which was helping keep the teddy down. So in the next slide, we can see some of the other ECMs that we've been kind of looking at to see what it would take to take us to TGS Tier 2. And in those graphs as well, they're the thermal energy demand intensity contributors. So we're able to see which where our energy is going, where it's leaving. And as you know, like for TGS version 3, tier 1 and tier 2, the TEDI is one of the most important, I guess, difficult targets to meet, because it requires kind of a rethinking of the building envelope of the building. So we can see from these graphs for the commercial side that there's a big 18.1 kilowatt hours per meter square per year, which is just coming from the existing building. That's just from the lack of just from having those older walls. So that kind of limits a little bit of what we can get with TGS for this building. I think TGS Tier 1 is more achievable. TGS Tier 2, it would be really difficult with those heritage walls. And for the residential, we can see that a big chunk of this is going to windows. Photo pressurization plays a big part, but we have included efficient, like turn down air volumes for that, for the pressurization. Infiltration is another thing that we've suggested as well, but that requires air testing as well. So a lot of people don't like to bank on that. So it's a little bit more difficult. But these are some of the strategies that we've been looking at for TGS Tier 2. But currently the design passes TGS Tier 1. So I think that if there's any questions, I can answer.
Okay, thanks. Does that conclude the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks, everyone. So we're going to move into questions from panel members, and I'll just go down the list. And I'll start off with Betsy, if you could, please.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. There's been so much work done on this project. It really is a pleasure to see it anew. Just one simple question. The material choice for the rebuilt addition onto the heritage building, I don't know if I missed it, but what is the intention for that facade that wraps around there?
You're speaking about the addition up above? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the two stories.
We haven't concluded. We're looking at there were additions to the building that unfortunately were removed at one point, but they were of the limestone color, not brick. So the tower corners came up. So we're mimicking the color. We want to get at the color to be the same as the limestone, and then probably look at either a porcelain panel or a metal panel, but something that we can would be quite rigid and give us lots of insulation as well.
Okay, and this is an office building, so is it a single office, or is it broken up with some interior space on the inside as well, or is this too early to understand?
Well, no, it has been used as an office. It's been used for a lot of different things, actually. Training center for Rogers. It was a TV station for a whole series of television networks. So it has been sort of carved up but not the structure. Everything's in great shape. So what we're doing to make it more usable and more viable is we're creating a core on the south side of the building. Right now there are stair and elevator and freight things all over the place. So we're consolidating that on the south. Maybe if we went to the ground floor, Faye, if you can move the slides to the ground floor. There we go. So we're looking to free up as much space within the building itself and create a more current core with unisex washrooms, elevators, everything pulled to that south end, which is now a solid wall, and then create also access to the new loading bay, which is that white area on the right. So by pulling the core down, it sets up well to be either multi-tenant or a single tenant. We've given the building a lot more lobby to take pressure off the hex at the front. It will remain an entrance, but it will give us some flexibility in terms of how the building is laid out. But the new lobby on the south overlooks into the courtyard and gives direct access to a new core. So you'll be able to use, if it's multi-tenant, you'll be able to use either front or back, depending on where you're located, or the new lobby will give access to all floors and give us the ability to have multi-tenant inside.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Betsy. George?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The first one is that following on from Betsy, I think I understood you to say that the uppermost story, the second floor on top of the existing heritage building, is mechanical. Did I get that right?
It's partially mechanical. It's an interesting, there was a series of large pieces of equipment originally in the building in a penthouse at the south side. They were then, I think it was Rogers or someone brought in an all-new HVAC system and scattered it about on the roof. We're consolidating that and trying to assemble the mechanical requirements back above the core. And yes, that will be within the upper level, as we call it, an embedded core. So there will be a little bit of space around it to give a kind of loft type office overlooking the floor below. So we're trying to capture as much as we can in what was a penthouse.
Is it the mechanical requirement that makes the height of that floor so much higher than the one beneath it?
Yes, so exactly. So by bringing the height up a little bit, it allows us to embed the penthouse and pick up some floor area for the building east and south of it, or sorry, east and north of it.
And my second question has to do you have, I mean, I noted in the presentation, there were a number of references to shade tolerant tree. I'm talking about the courtyard, shade tolerant trees and supplementary lighting and so on. Do you have any information on sunlight conditions in that courtyard?
We have done some analysis. Yes, it will be mostly in shadow, which is why Scott has picked the trees like hemlock and hemlock that exist well and the plant material in shade. I think it's going to be a pretty sunny site on the south and west. Might be pretty interesting, we think, to have a place, an area of almost refuge from the sun, but it will be bright. But it will be mostly in shade, yes.
And mostly meaning everything except that bit next to the access to loading for the old building?
The old building had no windows on its south side, but yes, that east facade of the old building will still get some, it gets the sun it gets now. The building beside it to the east is
oh no, I'm talking about the
outdoor space,
the south edge of your new service ramp into the existing building. You've got a green a planting bed there and a tree. That's where I would imagine the only place that would get any sun in that courtyard.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that's right, George. It's right beside the new loading bay. That's correct.
Those are my questions.
I would just let me just add to what George is asking too. And just to correct, we're still looking at the plant material, but we're not using hemlock anymore, which is very shade tolerant, but we want to have deciduous trees to add to meet the city's goals. So that's why Blue Beech, which naturally grows in the shade of large trees, is picked. And and ferns. But as I mentioned, we're working with a really great supplier out of Oakville to provide supplementary lighting to actually make this viable, to add more full spectrum light, and they actually have fixtures designed specifically for this purpose. So it'd be quite innovative.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on. Peter, please.
Yeah, so just a couple of questions. The thermal performance of the project doesn't look that great. Are you thermally isolating your projecting balconies? There's all kinds of them. And the second question is, what are you thinking around that structural support on the southwest corner of the building above? It's so disconnected from everything else.
Okay, we are studying the possibility of thermally breaking the balconies. Yes, that is absolutely being looked at, for sure. Will help a lot if we can pull that off. And that is definitely a goal for sure. In terms of the corner structure, it's very early. To be fair to all of us, the POPs was an idea generated very late in the game by the community and also supported by everybody, the city and ourselves. So when we went back and late in the game, we figured a way to cut out that corner. You can see in this plan, there's just a large square column. I didn't like that. Nobody liked that. So we started to work on a new way of supporting it. And it's early days. So to be fair to all of us, we haven't really studied it yet, Peter. So it's something we will be looking at. The thought was if we could pull back the column to open up more direct cut across space, in other words, the diagonal at the corner, that would be better. So we're looking at bringing the base of that column in and then angling it out towards the perimeter of the cantilever. But if you've done a sketch during this, you could ship it to me. I'm just kidding. Looking at it pretty clearly now, we're going to have a little more fun with it. So.
Okay, thanks. Bridget.
And the access, it's a pretty tricky traffic area. So you can access from Lakeshore by turning right, or from Queens Quay by turning right in the one direction, going westbound. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, it's obviously Lakeshore it would not be a safe condition to come out and necessarily turn left that close to the intersection as well. But as one of the reasons for the through block relative to the cars, it's a great idea for the pedestrians, but was to be able to allow people to go multi-directionally, but without having to make left turns necessarily. It's obviously.
And then just so I'm clear, there's one parking entrance and kind of and that is used, and it's only under the new portion, and there's nothing under the heritage building, but the parking spaces will be shared by both the office and the residential portion of some split.
Yeah, the way we would do it is, which is not uncommon in mixed use projects. The first level of parking, which will supply parking for visitors, but it'll also supply parking for the office.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then so like I'm wait for an Uber or someone's coming to pick me up. This driveway along the east side is the primary place for both the residential and the office portion, because there's no other location, right? Like that's really given the.
Well, there is, yes, I think that's the best location. Which is one of the reasons we're bringing the lobby out. Mm-hmm. Commercially, the building has existed, has the large parking lot in the back. So I think that'll take pressure off people parking and waiting on, certainly Lakeshore would be nuts. but Bathurst is not great, and neither is Queens Quay. So by providing this, it also gave us a lot of waiting area.
And then you spoke about these kind of little jogs that we see in the site plan. Were they created by like the city, Public Works, TTC? Like who's responsible for these like little ins and outies like that we see here?
Well, really, at the street, at the pedestrian level, it is flat. There's a
I guess I'm looking in plan, like, because when you see Bathurst, like you had.
I see the curb. Yes.
Curb, like the kind of wiggly bit.
We don't understand it fully. Anyway, it was part of something done in the past. We have worked with urban design planning and have asked about straightening that out to give more public realm, more pedestrian public realm along that side, and also the corner. So that is a request that planning, urban design ourselves have made of transportation services, and we await clarity. We hope we can get that through.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
I would just add to answer Bridget's question too. The one thing we do know is that at Bathurst and Lakeshore Boulevard West, that was a right turn lane, and preliminary discussions with the city said they didn't think it was necessary anymore. So that's why that piece could potentially come out. And then our best guess on the other one on Bathurst is that it was some kind of like lay-by kind of feature. So, but no one seemed to know. No fog of time.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll come back to that. Fatty, next, please.
Hello. Thank you so much for the presentations. I had a couple of questions about the courtyard as well. The first one was addressed about the sun shade analysis. I'm wondering about the width of the entrance on the east side along Bathurst into the courtyard itself, and if you have any kind of ideas about, sight lines or how much do you actually want to invite the random passerby to enter into this courtyard to hang out, or is it mostly seen as a kind of entrance to the lobbies? How public do you imagine this to be, and what are the main kind of entry points especially along Bathurst that you would imagine? Would people be able to see it? Would people feel comfortable entering in there? Is it meant to have a more public presence, or are you imagining this to be a kind of much more secluded private space?
First shot at that. We are constrained, obviously, trying to make the lobby things work for the heritage building without touching the original building. So that has some constraint on it. However, that lobby is all glazed, and I think we'll have lots of eyes on the courtyard. The entire residential building, the lobby is pulled to the back to be on the courtyard. So, and then we work to align the in and out, the east and west access points to the courtyard to be a full view right through. But typically, I think the most important thing for the courtyard is to give separation between the buildings and a great amenity, mostly for the people in the office and the residents. But it is open to the public. It's a flow through, so you could connect from either side. But it's not the intent that this become like a park, really. It's more an amenity for the site, but also giving access to people that are on the sidewalk and want to come in and sit in the courtyard. It's certainly going to be open to the public.
Okay, great. And I just have one other really quick questions about some of the circles that are appearing in the renderings around the restaurant patios. Are these just suggestive or are actually part of the building design? Because they appear in some of the renders pretty prominently.
Yeah, it's an idea that we want to pursue. Basically it's a very thin metal circle, almost like a portal in the glass. So it's something that's hasn't been fully finalized, but it is something we'd like to pursue. It adds some interest, breaks down the retail, creates opportunity for entry, and makes for a fairly, I think, what will be an interesting base. And while still allowing flexibility. One of the great issues with retail, of course, is you never know how wide, how deep, or who's going to rent it. So we're trying to make it flexible and yet interesting.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks,
Sorry,
Patty.
can I just add one point to our response there too? It's about 4 meters wide, that entrance along Bathurst, to give you a sense of sight lines. And I think it is our intention that it would be very, it's not like this is, we're putting a gate here. We definitely would like people, the public, to come into the space and use it. As Dermot said, it does offer an alternate experience to what is around, more shade, more wind protection, a more introverted kind of space. There's potential for programming, as I mentioned. So it is very much something that we would see, we consider this porosity to the site so people can move east-west, move towards Lakeshore ultimately. So that is the intent.
Okay, thanks.
Very helpful.
Keep going. Nina Marie, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Some of my questions have already been answered, so I don't need to repeat them here, but I'll focus on the landscape plan just for the moment. Scott, maybe questions for you. The tree planting plan, I know on page 36 you acknowledge that the difficulty with the below grade spaghetti of infrastructure, but the rhythm of trees that you have established, are those based on strictly soil replacement, silvicels? There's nothing to indicate in the drawings that I could see. Maybe I missed it. What's the below grade plan for what you've shown versus the areas where they're more clustered, for example, the northwest corner?
Yeah, we have shown, could you go to the landscape plan and I can just think you can see it a little bit to Nina Marie's question there. It's slide 35. Yes, thanks. And I don't know
Which
if you could
one
just
sorry,
zoom
this
in.
one?
Yeah, great. Sorry, it's if you could zoom in a little bit. So we have dashed in the outline of the soil cell arrangement to provide the soil volume requirements for the city. And it's a little hard to see on this plan. You can see it, for instance, along the if you just move actually to Bathurst. Or yeah, you can see it here a little bit. See some of the dashed lines. So yeah, there you can see that dashed line just under 2.4 meters. That would be the outline of the soil cell arrangement. So in this case, 3 trees sharing that soil volume.
And then thank you, Scott, on the northwest corner where you have the clusters of trees shown, which actually I really appreciate, actually breaking the rhythm there and providing a little bit of wind protection and shade around solar gain and pedestrian comfort will be really important. But are those also, is that clearance and silvicell arrangement also been established there, or is that hopeful concept? I mean, I appreciate that it is.
Oh, no, sorry. Those are all existing trees.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and so we have basically retained the existing line of softscape, it's turf basically, to protect that root zone to preserve those trees. So that's why we haven't increased it. So we're not impacting the rooting zone for all those existing trees. They're large honey locusts.
I was going to say, I think they're honey locusts now that I'm looking at the site plan. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. A few questions. Actually, that's a good plan for. There is about the courtyard. Who ultimately is responsible? Who does it belong to? Like, is it fully accessible from the office and then the residential? And who will be responsible for its maintenance?
The courtyard is predominantly above the parking garage and predominantly on the residential lands, almost exclusively. There's a small portion that isn't. You can see the dotted line on this if you zoom in. So in terms of property ownership, it will mostly be owned by the residential building to the south, but it will be shared and there will be a reciprocal agreement, I'm sure, put together in terms of maintenance. It's accessible and open to the residential building from the lobby and also from the commercial lobby.
Okay, and the in terms of the office itself, is the office, the interior, like completely being redone as part of this project? Is it like a kind of a gutting and then you're redoing it? And what's the program with regard to the commercial?
We're not exactly sure because, you know, you need, in the case of a building like this, you really need that answered by a tenant or someone interested in occupying the building. So until that happens, we're taking the approach that we will leave what's in the building alone until such time as we understand what the demands are from a tenant. And then we're trying to design the building such that if someone wanted it to be multi-tenant, you could easily do that by adding the core that we're showing. So right now, the building is interesting. It's got a concrete structure, mushroom type caps on the columns. It's concrete, early days of concrete, which is great. And it's in good shape, very, very good shape.
And is the core, is the core you're showing right now the core that currently exists, or is it just?
No, there really is not a core.
Okay.
There's a freight elevator in one location. There's a passenger elevator in another location. There's stairs in the corners. There's a fair bit of, it's very different.
Okay. Okay, a couple of other questions actually this is a good plan for it. Along the, well, while we're in the office, there is a little seating area south of the hexagonal between the office and, what, can you just maybe elaborate on how do you access it? Because it's not clear here that there is direct access from the building.
There will be access, there is now, it's accessible now from a door off that stair. There is a stair in that corner in dark blue. However, it's really up to, it's not accessible. And what we promoted is to build an internal ramp inside the building so as not to affect the exterior and get a way down onto that. Unfortunately, like many heritage buildings in Toronto, it's a half up, half down. So it's not a full basement and the ground floor is raised, which makes it difficult for accessibility.
So this is still a bit of an aspiration. It still hasn't quite been resolved.
It depends. Yeah, exactly. The space allotted, and it's easy to do. We've looked at it, and it's a reasonable place to do it. So it is possible to get a ramp down. We see that as, depending on who takes or occupies the building, it could be a small cafe or a lunchroom, whatever, and accessible to the outside.
Okay. And one last question: along the laneway, there is kind of like that large indent adjacent to kind of where between the loading area and then the parking access. What is that? What's the purpose? What's the function of it?
I think partially it acts as a lay-by connection to the lobby, and allows people to come into that space without interfering with traffic and waiting for someone. So it's really a drop-off waiting zone.
Okay, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Janet?
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks for the presentation. It's good to see all the work that's been done. I just have two questions. The rest have been answered. One is, Dermot, you said that the community, you work closely with the community and the POPs was something that came out of that. And I'm curious to hear what the community said they would like in that area.
Well, what they were looking for was to open up the corner. The most important thing to them from the start, and I think obviously to almost anyone walking that sidewalk, is to get that corner as open as possible. So even after we had pulled the building well back, they still said to us, So they asked for the corner to be open as much as humanly possible. So the idea was We pulled the building back initially in both directions, both from the property line on the west, but also the south. We showed the opportunity for the courtyard. They said they would rather have more publicly accessible space on the corner and wanted to open the corner up as much as possible for pedestrian activity. A lot of people, they pointed out, coming from the airport with luggage, people walking along, riding bikes, whatever, walking, pushing strollers. It was all tight. Let's see what we can do to open it up. So they requested that we put the open space on the corner and get that corner as open as humanly possible. So.
Thanks. And just to follow up on a couple of questions about the courtyard, I just want to understand, and maybe if you've said this, I apologize, I didn't hear it. Have you done the sun shadow studies yet to see actually how much light gets to penetrate into the courtyard?
Yes, we did. This came up. George brought the question up earlier. It is mostly in shade most of the day, except for the north side adjacent to the office building. Most of the courtyard will.
Do you have those here by any chance?
We may actually have. I'm not sure what's in the appendix.
Yeah, as you're going through that, Dermot, I think there's an extract that was in the appendix just for June, but the full shadow studies have been done with respect to this by Ralph Baumeister, both in comparison to the existing as of right conditions and the incremental ground plane conditions at all seasons. And as Dermot indicated, from the get-go, most of that courtyard space will be in shadow for most of the day.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, John. Pat, please.
Yes, thanks. Question about what is the material on the south side of the Heritage Building, the office building? I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, we go back to the south side is, these are always sensitive things. Do you try and reclaim brick, find it somewhere to make the same brick? I think probably what we would do is make it in a rigid panel of some sort and insulate it and get the colors as. I'm a believer in, if you're making an addition on the Heritage Building, it should look like an addition and understand where the building was. There are fragments on the south side that were added over time. There used to be a factory connected to it. So it's a bit of a puzzle. However, I think the new materials you're seeing along the lobby would be mostly glass, opening.
Whoa.
Wow. Opening views up towards the courtyard. The new loading bay is not windowed. It might have a clear story or something in it. So probably it's going to be masonry, but we're fairly open.
Right. And is there an opening? Is there a way to get from the office building directly into the courtyard, or do you have to go out the east and west sides of the building?
There is easily opportunity to come. The problem is the courtyard is at the same level as the lobby. And the building, as you can see, we have to add a stair and an elevator to make up the difference because the ground floor is 5.5, 6 feet in the air. So it becomes a little difficult, but yes, from the lobby, we can certainly add doors on that south face.
Right. And then last question, I'm assuming that the planters, the raised planters, are to get the soil volume because you're not finding that amount of extra soil that you need by increasing the height of the first level of the garage. Is that correct?
Scott?
We have the soil volume pad above grade that we need, and so to but I think we do have some headroom below grade as well. But yeah, it was just to create a raised planter.
So yeah, so how high are the planters? How high have you raised them?
They're like 450 height.
Right, and then back to you, Dermot, so 450, but that wall is still, and the residential lobby is still glazed all the way around, so the planters make a kind of 400 base to that
That's right.
So you can't really walk out. You don't see the ground. Okay, that's fine. Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Matthew?
Thanks, Paul, and thank you for the presentation. Most of my questions have been answered, but I have one kind of continuation of a question from Nina Marie's line of questioning. Knowing that this planted area, and if you go to slide 35 will probably be the easiest, and this question is for Scott. Knowing that this planted area at Bathurst and Lakeshore is quite successful where it's existing, has there been any thought about adding, ground cover or other additional planting areas along Queens Quay to kind of connect these rows of trees, make them a little bit more natural?
Matt, the trees along Lakeshore Boulevard?
Along Queens Quay, I think would be the easiest place.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's I guess we biased the ground plane to allow movement. That's what we kept hearing from the public. That it's tight. There's a lot of people moving along here, so that's why the trees are planted in hard surface, and we didn't include planters because it's to maintain a couple of things. Public realm on the publicly accessible area on the city side of the property. You can see that strange property line gets very thin there, as well as the challenge with tree planting. You can see that I would have preferred to line up those trees along Queens Quay, but in order to get as many trees as I can, they have that kind of displaced alignment. So there's the potential, but then it impacts the kind of movement for pedestrians. So that's why we are proposing only trees in hard surface.
Thanks, Scott.
At this time, but we can certainly look for your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jeff?
Thanks, Paul. I don't think I have any questions right now.
Okay, and Kevin?
Thanks very much. Was a whole building connectivity analysis done for the enclosure? We're not
Sorry,
sure.
can you repeat that? Sorry.
Just wondering, as we calculate the TEDI, I noticed that we're compliant for Tier 1. I'm wondering, has a whole building connectivity analysis been performed for the enclosure?
So are you talking about the thermal bridging calculations?
That's correct.
Yeah. So right now it has some assumptions as well, because we haven't gotten the details. We haven't landed on that, but we're using a pretty conservative details from thermal bridging guide. So this is taking that into account.
Thank you. What's the value that you've arrived at?
So actually for the residential, it's actually R7. So that includes like the balconies and the and all the transition as well.
Okay. Thank you. And
R7?
Yeah, so just I guess to give a background for everybody else, it's just when we look into the actual effectiveness of the building envelope, and we have to take into account transition losses from the edges of the slabs, or a lot of transitions within the envelope. So we do a takeoff of that, and we use some transmittance values that have been published by the BC Hydro. So and that's what we usually use to document these details for TGS. Sorry about that.
no, I'm not saying this is easy, but I would actually say R7 just to me seems a little high, actually. But
Yeah.
We can go through that.
It's not it's not bad. Like we found that R7 is kind of it's a bit tough to get sometimes, but with some thermal bridges we've assumed that we can get that construction. So it's not, there are some thermal breaks, but
Okay.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
R7 is what we have
our
right now.
calculations are that when you get close to R10, we're in the kind of zero carbon territory. So I just
Right.
want to analyze your model just a little bit. So
Sure.
it was mentioned that you were looking at thermally isolating your projections. What technology are you looking at?
Yeah, so I can look at the different details. Like I have in the full report, we have the details that we've assumed, but they're not like we do have thermal breaks in the slabs. We have thermal breaks for window to wall transitions. We have that insulated R-pan. Also the spandrel as well is R18, so it's pretty good spandrel.
Well, that was my next question. So what's that technology? Is this a window wall system that we're looking at?
So we're looking at curtain wall. It's
Okay.
a curtain wall, unionized curtain wall.
Okay.
Yeah. So and it has additional backpan insulation. I mean, this is again, it's kind of preliminary. Like this is kind of a. We don't have this. We haven't.
That gives me some good context. Thank you.
Right.
Just a few more quick questions, I hope. So we're looking at decentralized ventilation, ERVs in the units, correct? I got that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Great. So are we sealing the doors?
Yeah.
We're not anticipating any ventilation between the corridor and the door.
No,
units, correct?
No, that's just to keep the odors have that.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing too. But I'm talking about your calculation for your corridor pressurization. It can go down considerably.
The ventilation is all through the insulated. Yeah, it's nothing is going through the corridors.
Did you model a 4-pipe or a 2-pipe fan coil system?
I believe it's just a 4-pipe.
Okay, great. Lastly, are we looking at, or is there a chance that some heat can be shared between the commercial building and the residential building? Can they share a central loop potentially?
I mean, we'd have to talk to the mechanical designer about why this was split up, but I think right now I modeled them differently because we have to model them differently if they have a different central loop.
But is this a possibility? Is what I'm asking.
I mean, I would have to check with the mechanical designer because at the end of the day he designed for a reason, and so I'm not entirely sure what that was. But
I think to answer, there will be opportunity if someone we are trying to build that opportunity in. It depends really who occupies the commercial building and how much they want to do in terms of changing the mechanical. If they were to come back to us and say, we'd love to look at an overall system, then there will be an opportunity to take waste heat off the air conditioning side and certainly help on the res side. So
yeah, you're leapfrogging. I was going to get into the comments. Exactly. I think maybe
it's a huge opportunity and we'd love to do it, but it really depends who wants to, occupy the building, the heritage.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
We'll be pushing.
Wonderful.
Okay, that's it. Okay, let's move to comments. Obviously, we're quite a bit behind schedule here, but since we only have one item, I think we'll be all right. So I'll go down the list. Betsy, can you lead off?
Sure, thank you. And I want to thank the team again for putting together, which it's just a completely different proposal than what we saw before. So it's clearly been a lot of work that's gone into it. My comments are kind of just in two main camps. One is to pick up on Matthew's discussion of the continuity of landscape. Generally, I think you're in the right territory relative to the treatment of each side of the building from a landscape component, potentially except for that inspiration image of the Yonge and Dundas corner. It will amplify the expanse of paving that we already have at that intersection. And we all know that intersection is one of the biggest kind of and loosest throughways that we have in this neighborhood. So I'm just going to ask that if there's a potential to reconsider denuding that prow of landscape material and potentially putting something there to advance the landscape forward closer to the intersection so that we're not just seeing more hard surfaces continue from the street up through right to the front door of the building. That's my only, I'll let the landscape group continue to comment on that piece. Architecturally, I think the continuity of that material color is kind of working really well for you on the ground level at Bathurst. It reminds me of the condominium at Spadina that has the brick balustrades and the brick pieces kind of all kind of forming the building. And I know that you kind of stated earlier that you're a fan of decoupling material and form from a historic building to an addition. However, I think that potentially marrying those two back together may help relative to the various formal attributes your new piece has. It has the geometric piece on the bottom, then the curved facades, which are completely their own thing on top. So I think my one note architecturally is going to say maybe explore, albeit briefly, a closer palette option for the new building that brings it slightly more in tune with the historic building, because I think that continuity may help marry the two pieces together. I really love that you're making the most of the Lakeview opportunities. There aren't many buildings that are 100% sure they're going to maintain those views throughout the future, and I think this one is. So that's a really great thing. And potentially bringing plant material up there would be really fantastic. So again, my comment was on the rectilinear portion of the building, not the curved facade, which I think are kind of working for you right now. And then just a note of something that you have nothing to do with, but neighborhood retail is really successful when it's built up of a lot of small storefronts. Given that you have the large Loblaws across the street, you don't need to plan for a large grocery piece in this building. In some relatively recent condominium developments on Ossington and here on Queen East, there's been a move to get a series of small shops and restaurants instead of one big vendor. It means there's more doors on the street, more pedestrian traffic, and there's a more functional neighborhood condition. So I would just encourage your whole team, which I know is not you individually as architect and landscape architect, to consider breaking up the storefronts into a lot of smaller pieces, especially given the kind of traffic you're going to get to and from the airport. I think the amenity there will actually make it seem like a neighborhood corner, coupled with the pulled back portion of the building. Thank you very much. And I'm, again, thanks for the presentation.
Hey, thanks, Betsy. George?
Okay, yes, thought I might be muted. Well, I'll start because I'm not, I had a slightly different take than Betsy on the carryover of the brick from the existing building onto the base of the new residential building on Bathurst Street. But it was part of my general sense that for my money, there are too many formal motifs in play on the residential building. If you add up that brick base and then what you call the rectilinear lower portion, both on Bathurst and on Queen's Quay, plus the wave, the undulating facades above that, plus the column at the corner. In my opinion, this needs editing, and there needs to be a reduction in the number of formal moves you're trying to make overall. I was going to argue for not doing the brick base on the facade, but Betsy's comment made me think maybe the alternative is to do more of the facade in the brick rather than just the amount you've done, which would be another way of reducing the number of motifs in play, which is my primary. So, and as for that column at the corner, I mean, Dermot already admitted it's early days, but for me, it angles way back in too far, making the whole, even though I'm not suggesting it will fall down, it looks as it projects the image of being likely to do so, which is not, to my mind, a good thing. I think you might set it up so that people cutting diagonally across the corner could go behind it. So I think something that's just a little cooler and a little calmer and not quite so show-offish would be appropriate.
Okay, thanks, George.
Oh, no, I'm not done. One more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm worried about the service bay being added on the back of the heritage building. I think this has to be done very carefully. And I have two suggestions to make. One is that where it ends, the east end of it, at the moment you've got it aligning exactly with the east wall of the building, I think that's not the right way to do it. It seemed, in terms of the volumetrics, I can't remember whether it goes all the way up to the top of the building or not. But in terms of the volumetrics, it would be better if it were either pulled back so it didn't go all the way to the corner, or if that compromises your depth of service bay too much, that it actually would be pulled forward so it kind of interlocks the corner rather than just align exactly, which seems to me much too perfunctory. I'm making the opposite kind of formal comment about this service bay as I am about the residential building, where I think a little more design is actually called for. And the other thing that occurred to me that I think would be a very positive move would be to modify the south face of that service bay so as to incorporate a ramp that creates an access from the office building into the courtyard and actually gives you some plastic material to work with in terms of orchestrating that facade, which otherwise runs the risk of being a rather banal edge to the courtyard. Those are my comments, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, George. I'm going to go to Nina Marie next because she has to leave shortly.
Oh, thank you so much. I apologize for jumping the order. I know that Fadi will pick up on some of my comments, I'm sure. Thank you, Betsy, for talking a little bit about, you've given me some space to lead off. Just want to emphasize, I know how challenging these sites are for soil volume and for tree placement. You do have an interesting precedent with the honey locust trees that are irregularly spaced. And I think if there's any opportunity you can find to creatively extend, even through ground cover, as Matthew suggested, for the purposes of slowing, holding, and draining water in a way that's visually interesting and that is additive to the public realm, I would super encourage that. I think there's really a little bit of an opportunity here despite the challenges, and maybe that landscape form takes quite a different approach. I know that the tree selection will be challenging, and I appreciate that you've got a locally adapted supplier. This is always the challenge in bringing these images to reality. I think the extent to which you can pop out that regular rhythm is actually helpful in this case, and it will allow for a mixed selection, perhaps more than we typically see. Again, really, I know it's tight. I think there are real opportunities in the amenity spaces in the courtyards, which you've begun to explore, and I would really encourage you to champion those with locally adapted material that has perhaps significance in a community that's so close to the water, where wind and microclimate are critical. I know you know these things. I would like to voice support for them, and particularly with my colleagues in the DRP who can understand the connections of those to a vibrant public realm in a way where the trees are more than decorative, but really functional and performative. I'll hold it right there. I know there are others with similar comments about public realm, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Peter next, please.
Yeah, I've got a few comments. Sorry, I'm just waking up, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, at least
So
it's not
first of all,
the
office expansion over above the at the Heritage Building. I'm concerned about the cladding there. It seems incongruous with anything else, and doesn't seem to be the French window kind of expression. Doesn't seem to be fitting. So I think that needs further development. As I mentioned in my question, I'm worried about the overhang and the structural support of the southwest corner. It seems totally a random idea, and you know, I might actually support a single column as opposed to this V-shaped thing that comes out of nowhere. I'm worried about the parking. It's a ratio of 1 parking stall per 4 units. I'm not a guy who supports any parking, but that is such a low number. I just can't imagine that's going to fly in the public space. and the marketing space. I'm with George on the editing of the elevational issues, particularly from Kings Quay. There's too much going on. And the projecting slabs answer that I got from Sweeney was, quote, "We're looking at it." Doesn't work for me anymore. It's time to stop pretending, and it's time to start making commitments to thermal separation. And that leads to my final point, and that is that, and this is to Toronto Waterfront as well as the owner here, it's time to start talking about carbon, both carbon emissions in operations and carbon in the building themselves. We have to start engaging our opponents in terms of what the carbon emissions are, carbon footprint. And it's not a requirement, I know, but it's time to start engaging. Let's hear about the carbon footprint of the operations and the embodied carbon in the building going forward. Those are my comments.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Bridget?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that from Scheme 1 to Scheme 2, both a huge improvement and really positive contribution. And in the meantime, the whole neighborhood has changed. Like in effect, you know, the Bentway is fully operating, the entire building on the north side with the Loblaws plus the kind of new construction is up and running. So in a way, the context has changed radically. And so I think it's a perfect opportunity to really make a difference with this really important site. I would call it right now kind of hostile. Like if you've walked with your like rolly suitcase in this area, it's really not very pleasant. And so the opportunity to domesticate and kind of make this kind of slightly weird island into something much more civil, welcoming is really, I just think, the important both challenge and really wonderful contribution that this project can make. I feel that the straightening out of both Bathurst Street and the corner is a must. And as a member of this committee, I'm just saying that that just has to happen. I don't know who's responsible for it, but these little jigs and jogs kind of are really make Bathurst just like such a weird kind of street. And this little piece between Queens Quay and Lakeshore just has to become and feel more civic. And these jogs just make it look so suburban and just has to sort of be changed. I really appreciate the consultation with the community groups in the interim between Scheme 1 and 2, and the fact that you're getting this input about the POPs directly from the neighborhood group, I think is super important. I guess attention to the north side of Queens Quay, which is really a kind of missing link. So right now you're kind of coming along, there are all the condos, you got the marina on the other side, and then you hit the parking lot. And so you're going to fill in effect, the last remaining spot. And I just think it's so, that whole elevation is so important. The community center and the school on the other side, it's you know, it's a brick building. So even though, you know, so it's a new building, Pat Cow's Carruthers Shaw, but it's actually brick. And so I feel that George's comment about too many formal motifs probably needs to be underlined, and maybe the capacity for the brick to go from Bathurst around to Queens Quay, given what's happening on the south side of the street, I think could actually be a kind of knitting element, and clearly modern, but I think in a way to kind of tie a material palette together in a street that has a very disparate material palette condition. So it could have a way of anchoring the corner through its materiality that I think could be extremely positive. And then I think I would agree with Peter's two comments. One, the kind of cladding of the office building feels like a leftover, and I understand the kind of challenge of not having a tenant, but really it's kind of like the kind of cap to what is a lovely heritage building, and I think it just needs a level of sensitivity that I know you will put to such an important decision. And then I feel like this kind of thermal separation of the balconies, we talk about this all the time, and the fact that we actually have to keep mentioning it is the problem. that should just be a no-brainer. You have all these units. It's like you're kind of like you're just connecting all this energy right outside. You're just throwing it out, and we have a harsh climatic zone. And I just feel that you need to work the numbers, do everything you can, because as a potential buyer, you would want to know that this issue of being thermally broken has been considered, and I would consider it a feature in terms of if you were purchasing any one of these condominiums. But I think the effort has been truly appreciated, and I feel it's such an important site for Queens Quay, for Bathurst, for this missing link, and the timing is really perfect to do something really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Fadi?
Thank you so much. It's my first time seeing this project, and I really appreciate the massing and the retention of the whole heritage building. I'm a bit exhausted of the facadism trend in the city unless done exceptionally well, like in the Loblaws across the street. So keeping the integrity of the heritage building in that corner intact is really appreciated. I also really appreciate the presence of the courtyard and Scott's response about the intentionality to maintain a kind of public porosity. And I'm also appreciative of the idea that this is a shade respite in a potentially busy and bright corner of the city. I think this is okay. Sunlight analysis doesn't mean all of these places need to be in sun all the time, but I do think that a lot of its success will be hinged upon the idea of wanting this to be actually an accessible or not public space. So I think the idea of having the porosity also sightlines through the glass is really critical. And in some ways, there are maybe very simple strategies in the public realm where you could do some things with the paving or the setback of the trees or the planting or the lighting to give more of a hint to enter through that 4-meter portal coming up from Bathurst into the site. So I think there are ways around this, and I would just appreciate a bit more investigation into it. I would also want to echo the idea of maybe integrating more sustainability strategies for gray water reuse on stormwater drainage and on-site retention. The minimum, kind of 3 millimeters on-site rain retention is becoming quickly obsolete, and in an area that could potentially face flooding. I want to echo maybe Betsy and Nina Marie's comments about the idea of maybe using extending some of the planters around, and Matt's suggestion as well to think of these as potentially performative landscapes and not just decorative. I know as a landscape architect, I might not have a lot to say about the building itself, but I do think that the success of it will be in the quality of both the spandrel and mullions. Having a successful wavy pattern will be highly dependent on how good these materials are. So I also want to thank Kevin for pushing on the performance of the curtain wall. So these things together are really important. And maybe I'm a bit biased also about the editing of the formal moves, circles, waves, diagonal columns. I do think a bit of editing is in place. But thank you so much for the project. And there are a lot of really strong, important elements on a site that is really critical.
Thanks, Fadi. Eric?
Thank you. Yes, I think there's, from a massing perspective, huge improvement from the original scheme. So I want to thank you. I think that is definitely going to the right direction. The one thing that we note on the presentation is, one of the question is about how does the building fit in the context? And I found that from the package perspective, there isn't a lot of information as to how does the building relates to what's happening on the west side of Bathurst or what's happening on either side of Queens Quay. So I think in the next review, I would want to see some of the kind of longer views that are along Queens Quay, looking up Bathurst, so that you can actually see relationship to what's happening along some of these buildings and along the streets especially. So just to understand what's the streetscape character, because this is the last of the building. I think that in looking at some of your rendering, I think the kind of the way the podium is expressed. First of all, I'm just going to say that I agree with all my colleagues' comments so far. So I won't try to just be provide additional comments. The podium along Batter Street, you know, the way it's expressed, it really feels like a sheer wall. And if I look, you know, there's a difference where you have a change in materiality. And so I'm thinking that where your fourth floor level, I think expressing that base a little bit better, maybe eliminating the bay so that you can actually create a gap at that level for 1 or 2 level, I think would actually help to improve the readability of the taller portion and the base. On the there's a few discussion. I think that I think the pops at the corner of Bathurst and Queensquay. I very happy to know that you're going to continue to explore it, because it should be a fun space. It should be something special. It does feel like an afterthought right now. I think it's something that feels like, yes, it came late in the game. So completely encourage you to look at it in terms of what does it mean from a public art, animation, how does it relate to the ground floor of the building, what is that underside, and then how does the whole structure work? Because yeah, right now it doesn't quite feel like it's come together, but you know, it's a place that has the potential to be something special. So it just needs to continue to evolve. The view corridor along as you look east on Lakeshore, so how does that view, you know, it is a key view that if you drive or you bicycle along Lakeshore, it's quite special. And I think that, just building on Betsy and some of the comments earlier, it needs to be something more. I think the building is good, what you're doing there, but either landscape, public art, something within the public realm here needs to happen that is special to celebrate that corner. It is, you know, as you also come down from southbound from Bathurst, it is a place that is highly visible, and as well along the lakeshore. So public elements of public art on the courtyard. I like the idea of the courtyard. I think that, you know, it has, you know, it's starting to evolve quite nicely. But I do found that there isn't really, and I was glad when you told me that, you know, there's possibility to actually do things, change things that are within the office. Because right now, the office doesn't really have a relationship with the courtyard in itself. It's very much turn its back. This is where you have the bathroom, you have the elevator cores, you have all the things. So there isn't, except for a tiny little bit where you actually, I know you put some planting to deal with the grade. But I think there needs to be further exploration about how both the ground floor relationship from the residential to the courtyard to the office courtyard, how the office can better engage that courtyard, because it right now feels like it's very much at grade, turn its back, it's pretty much of a blank wall, have some servicing. So that to me needs to be should be explored further. On the laneway to the east of the building. So I think, I mean, I like the overall, you know, the fact that it's going to serve some, you know, it needs to serve some important function. But I think there is, I think that if right now, the way I read your site plan on page 15, it's a gap. There's a gap in a really kind of big indent. I think there's some septet issue there. It looks like there isn't really, it really isn't a lobby. I think that either that whole entryway or whatever that space needs to be rethink. Maybe the wall needs to come further, has some glazing. Maybe it is a secondary entrance. But currently, I think it is of concern to me. Also, because you've got loading, you've got parking, you've got 3 big kind of servicing entry that are kind of in between also the courtyard link, east-west link. I think these doors, I think in the selection of what these doors are, the materiality, their treatment needs to be quite crucial, because that is going to be a very, very visible area. So it needs to be given some really important attention. And I think that, so I think otherwise all my other comments were mentioned.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Eric. Pat?
Sorry, I'm here.
Yeah.
Just having a hard time with my unmute button. I think Bridget really nailed it when she said it's one of the most hostile intersections in Toronto. And I don't know really what can be done about it. I mean, probably not a lot. Maybe Betsy's comment about trying to get a little bit more presence and closure on that corner is a thought. But to that end, I do think that the introduction of the courtyard and the kind of granularity of inner block circulation that's being proposed is really helpful. So it really does kind of start to, suggest a bit of a refuge and a sort of a more intimate way of moving through that block or that sort of quadrant of waterfront. So I think that's really, has a lot of promise. I want to, reiterate, Eric's comment. I think connecting more generously with the office building into that courtyard space is important. I'd also say, actually, if you could put up slide 48, the precedent that's on that is actually very telling. It really does give a sort of sense of place for the courtyard as a precedent, which is really hard to achieve. But I think the way that it's designed right now, page 48, yeah. Maybe it's not 48. It's the one that's got the precedent on it with people sitting in a courtyard amongst trees, and it's got some plans on it as well. Maybe go back up.
45.
45. Yeah.
It's New York, right?
Yeah. Is this MoMA? I don't know where is that? Anyway.
That's Paley Park.
Paley Park.
Oh, Paley Park. Yeah. So that precedent, is a kind of has a great sense of place. And then when I look at the proposal, I feel like, notwithstanding, well, I think it's partly the tree strategy where you have to put things in raised planters and pushing them off to the corners and then putting rocks. I think the stone idea is great, but it sort of puts this back to kind of a bit of a circulation zone rather than a kind of congregating space. So I think there's something needs to be calibrated there in addition to connecting better to the office. And then one thought too, and I don't know how difficult this would be, could the residential lobby be organized so that it can be open during the day or through certain hours so that it can also be a connection back to Queens Quay? And then I think it really does complete itself as a kind of mid-block connection. Just the last couple of comments. I do think that there are a lot of formal moves on the building that take away from the building, the architecture of the new portions as being a kind of counterbalance to the heritage buildings. And whether that's a reduction in the formal moves, the massing of the building, or whether it's a reduction in both, a reduction of the number of materials employed in the new construction. I think both of those are really worth looking at. And then the only comment about the corner being open, everybody wants corners to be open, but I guess that makes sense. But the current proposal, again, is a bit muscular. I mean, I would kind of suggest that you look at the kind of simpler, quieter, more gentle moves that you're making on the building than, something that's kind of quite so dynamic at that corner, something that's a bit more comfortable and pedestrian friendly. That concludes my comments.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Matthew?
Thanks, Paul, and thanks for the presentation. There's been a lot said already, so I'm just going to kind of reinforce one of the things that Eric and Pat has just said as well. I think there's an opportunity for you to investigate the pop space and really thinking about how you can enhance that through the design of the structure, but also how you can link that into the landscape and urban realm. Thinking about all these three pieces together, coming from both corners, I think might lead you down a path that is going to make a more successful pop space for you. I don't think it's a space that you're going to be moving through. I think it'd be fantastic to be able to stop there and to be protected a bit. So if you think about all those pieces together, landscape, structure, plantings, the park space, and the architecture, I think it might lead you down a path that's quite successful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I'm going to focus obviously on some of the sustainability pieces. I think Peter said it pretty well. Let's focus on carbon. It's worth noting that the City of Toronto today and tomorrow is debating the Transform TO strategy, which aims for citywide net zero emissions by 2040. So they're looking to move that up a decade. That's all buildings carbon neutral. So, being mindful of who's buying this building, Canderel's developer, who's owning the office building, they're going to have to decarbonize this in under 20 years. So tier 1 minimum compliance is not getting us very close. We could certainly talk about the big issues around thermal performance. There's a lot of windows. You've got a lot of geometric heat loss through all the undulations, the facades, the exposed ceilings. You've got the balcony slabs that need to get broken. Air sealing. There's a lot of stuff that you can do on air sealing. Some of the aerosolized air sealing is being applied in new construction across the city right now. I'd strongly recommend you look into that. I'll give you a bit of credit on embodied carbon with the heritage structure. You're going to get a little more leeway if I think you're looking at life cycle carbon at the building. You're not going to get maybe the operational performance or the envelope on the heritage side, but you're preserving it as much intact as possible. So you're going to get, I take that into consideration. Look at some of your material specifications, look at your concrete, look for low embodied carbon concrete, look at your insulation products that you're choosing, look for, if you're using a lot of foam here, presumably, there's some stuff you should be avoiding. Look more towards products like mineral wool or fiberglass. You don't want to be using XPS and watch your spray foams. So I think there's a lot of work. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's, I recognize that in the industry, we're working against a moving target, and we keep ratcheting the regulation very quickly. And this is a project that's been in the books for a number of years. And when it was maybe first proposed, it was pretty good, and very quickly. And depending on what happens in the next 2 days, they're going to be ramping up the rollout of Toronto Green Standard significantly. So, these buildings are going to be obsolete in 10 years, and we're going to have to fix them. So I would look at flexibility. There's stuff you may not be able to do today, but really focus on what's that transition plan going to look like. Are you setting up the future owners for being able to hit these targets, or is this going to be a major capital cost for them to get there? So it's tough. It's really hard. I recognize it's hard. I recognize it's really hard for condos, but things are changing really fast. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Kevin, please.
Thank you. Peter said it, so well. Carbon is is so hugely important, and I'm sorry to say that what I'm going to talk about is counterculture. There's a culture of the way in which buildings are quantified, the way that they're the value that people, how they're evaluated. It's not based on carbon. Carbon doesn't have a real cost. So, you've met the requirements, and I think that that's been sort of proven out. But I want to be pragmatic, and I'm wondering if there's some, it's been mentioned, Dermot, you mentioned it. Is there a way in which we can take some advantage of the basic components already in this project? For example, I've heard there's a 4-pipe infrastructure in the condo, so you're putting in that infrastructure. You can do simultaneous heating and cooling. You have a very high performance chiller that's working in the commercial. We know that there can be a symbiosis between the commercial profiling of energy and the residential. So if there's any way in which we can turn that gas boiler off, every minute we can keep it off, we're lowering the carbon content. We've met the target of 20 kilos. Can we get it down to 10? So if we put it, for example, on that chiller, can we put a heat recovery manifold on there? So that low grade energy can then be sold back to the condo. And then we're turning off that boiler for just even a minute, we're saving the carbon. So I think that could be a potential way even if you can't share the energy between the two buildings, which there could be all sorts of legal frameworks in place that prevent that. But if you can, there's a huge opportunity to take the heat out of the commercial property and dump it into the loop of the residential. And then that, for every minute you do that, we're lowering the operational carbon. Get it down to 10. You don't have to fire that boiler. You really don't. There could be easily 50% savings just on the heat. If you can't do that, even on the commercial side, can we do a primary heating loop off of that manifold? We run the perimeter radiation off that first wave of heat. You can lower the size of your cooling tower, and then you're not firing that boiler. You're not doing the simultaneous heating and cooling with two different systems. Like, the reason I'm saying this is there's a lot of infrastructure already there in place. You know, yes, there's a premium for that heat recovery loop, but I don't think it's really that big. So these are, I think, things that you could quickly look at in order to reduce the operational carbon, and potentially maybe that boiler, if the mechanical designer is sensitive enough, and I would really encourage this analysis, maybe it gets small enough that you put a little electric boiler in there that tops up the heat. And now we decarbonize the fuel source. So yes, you might be spending some electric fuel to power the building, but you have that opportunity for the owner when the regulations come in, and maybe there's some carbon pricing. I hope it comes. I hate to say that, but I hope that a huge wave of carbon pricing comes. Well, at least that building is situated to take advantage of that low carbon fuel. So these are, I think, a couple things that can easily be done with the infrastructure that's already in place. The last thing I want to say is that if the envelope, the enclosure can be improved with good thermal, good practices on thermal bridging and cutting out that heat flow through all those projections, and if that glazing ratio can be reduced, I'm saying that heat flow that is being prevented should go directly into downsizing of the mechanical system. Now, I know this is a counterculture. It's not a linear relationship. It's quadratic. The size of those machines should go down exponentially if it's done properly. So that financial analysis should be done to show that for the small amount of insulation that we're adding, we're decreasing the size of those systems considerably, which are very expensive systems. So my comments are, yes, you've met the requirements, and that's good and fine. Unfortunately, carbon is a huge deal. We've already talked about embodied carbon. It has to be a low carbon concrete spec, in my opinion. But on the operational carbon, I think there's a few systems that you can look at where there isn't a huge financial impact, and I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe those are all the comments. I'm going to do my best to try and summarize the major themes here, but there's a lot of them. I'm going to start off just saying I think we all appreciate the major revisions that have been made to this project from its former, scheme. As someone said, the context of the neighborhood has changed. A lot of buildings have been filled in and built, and some good examples and some opportunities that still exist. This is a very important site, given that it's the last real vacant site on Queens Quay. We all appreciate the retention of the full historic building instead of just the facade, and the reduction of the towers. However, there's been many suggestions made, and as I say, I'll try and summarize the major themes as to how to improve this before it comes back with detailed design. I'll just start off, I think, with the corner, and there have been several comments regarding the public realm. One about advancing the landscape forward to the actual corner. As someone said, it's a very hostile corner. It would be anything that can be done to sort of minimize that hostility would be welcome. Also, a very important facade along or frontage along Queens Quay. Yes, we appreciate the landscaping that's been proposed, but many suggestions made about more performative landscaping to be embraced along that, because that's going to be a very, very important frontage along Queens Quay as it turns the corner to Bathurst Street. With respect to the actual courtyard, a number of comments made, the notion that this is actually kind of a special refuge opportunity. It's an area, as people have said, that should have great porosity from both Bathurst Street right through. We appreciate the fact that people can walk through it, but access from the office to the courtyard came up many times, that we felt would be an essential component of this to make sure that works. Number of suggestions were made as to ideas to explore to do that. The landscaping in the courtyard is really important given the fact that it's not going to be in sun for the vast majority of the time. So special attention needs to really be addressed to the performative landscape that will be used there. With respect to another aspect of the public realm, I think everybody's in favor, like straighten out Bathurst Street. No in and outs, no curvy, no, there's no excuse for that. And it wouldn't change the performance of Bathurst Street one iota. So that I think is a really unique opportunity to expand the public realm by gaining that additional space, not only at the corner, but towards the southern edge of the block. With respect to the buildings, many comments have been made. One, basically about too many motifs being used for the residential building. Reference made to the waves, to the column at the corner, that further simplification would be welcome in terms of the materials and the use of those motifs as it moves towards detailed design. Also, in terms of exploring different palette options for the new building. A number of people have suggested that the cladding of the office expansion doesn't really they don't really feel like it fits, and that more development, more work on that is needed. With respect to the POPs, that relates to the building itself, but also to the public realm. We appreciate the fact that the community has been consulted and that they like that idea. But there's been a number of concerns about the nature of the placement of the column in that southwest corner, and more work is needed on that, especially to try and connect that corner, which could be a very special little place as people walk up Bathurst or along Queens Quay, as a little place to perhaps, I don't know, have a coffee or what have you, or just simply sit and observe the neighborhood. But more work is needed on that because it has a lot of potential. With respect to, I'm going to call it community, several comments made about that. Again, this is a neighborhood, and this is a unique chance to domesticate this area. It's quite hostile now. As you go along, walk along, or take the streetcar along Queens Quay, right now it just sort of peters right out by that huge parking lot. And so suggestions made about, we appreciate the retail at grade, but the reality is one big space is not needed. Seriously push the option of many small shops along that facade. It's a chance to help domesticate that area, especially. In addition to all of those comments with respect to the thermal performance, many suggestions made in detail, but basically we're not happy with what's been done so far. And a comment was made that 10 years from now, the solution is going to be quite inappropriate, and the special attention to carbon is needed now, not 10 years from now. So thermal separation is essential. We feel performance measures of the building, I think, need to be seriously explored and enhanced. And now's the time to do all that. So we would really look to see greater performance measures as the detailed design comes back. See if I have any other things that I want to pick up on here. With respect to, a comment was made about longer views of the building in its future context along Bathurst Street would be welcome when the detailed design comes back, so we can sort of really visualize it in the context of not only what's there, but how this will fit in. So I think those are the major themes. There's many other specific comments, but I hope that's helpful to the architects and landscape architects as they move forward. But again, I want to reiterate how much we appreciate the fact that this has gone through a major revision since 2018, and it's certainly on the right track. So I think those are the comments that I wish to make, and we can perhaps move to an opportunity for the proponent to respond, and then we'll take a vote. I'm not sure who wants to do that, whether it's Dermot or Scott or both of you. Anything you gentlemen would like to say from what you've heard?
You go ahead first, Dermot.
Sure, I can. I think most of the comments are very good. I've written down all of them. So lots to take in. I agree, this is an incredibly critical corner, very, very important. The pops, yes, came at us late. It's gotta be worked. I think there's a really interesting set of opportunities there, not just to sit down, but also the possibility of, as we develop the walls, things that face the pops, I think there's some really interesting opportunities there. So, and it needs work. We agree the structure needs work. So that's fine. I think in terms of from an architecture point of view, the idea of reducing the motifs, I think part of it is how the building is rendered currently. I think it'll be a lot softer at the end of the day. I think the other thing that we're developing is a stronger strategy to integrate more of the materiality of the more orthogonal grid-based facades into the balance of the building, because we need, right now the top of the building has not been fully worked out relative to what is solid, what is vision glass. So we're adding more solid and eliminating vision glass. So that's good. I think the one that all the comments to do with sustainability are absolutely critical. They're really, really important. We endeavor to continue to work hard to try and figure out how to do this. I think the one general comment I would have typically, and maybe this carries back through Waterfront to the city, if you want change, you need carrots and sticks, right? The biggest cost right now of trying to develop any kind of residential building in Toronto is a massive amount of money going to the city and a massive number of standards increasing. It's becoming absolutely, to be honest, untenable. So if you want to change the carbon and do all those things, God knows Toronto has the talent, has the ability, lots of skill in this city, but you've got to start, can't be just sticks. So I'd love you to take that message back, because it's getting crippling on the other side. So, because you also have to concern yourselves. We do, of course, as a community, and you do, and all of us designing buildings. It's also got to be around how good is the unit to live in. They're getting smaller. They got to be better. This building provides massive, really great outdoor space per unit, which is something we believe in. And then collective space. All of these things mean that we should approach buildings and design a little differently, but it's very difficult. I helped the city talk to the green building guys at City Hall quite often. And I can tell you they agree with the carrots and sticks theory. They'd love to see a little more help from council and City Hall. So anyway, that's just my diatribe on that. But no, the comments are good. I think the comments are good. I don't necessarily want to see brick coming around the building all the way, but I do think the comment relative to bringing in a stronger base, perhaps, again, that would probably add another motif, which I don't want to do. So based on other comments, so, it's always the same, right? We look at it, and George would like to simplify it, but add more to the base. No, I understand. It's perfect. It's perfectly reasonable criticism. Anyway, it was all good. Thanks for the comments. That's all I would say.
Okay, thanks, Scott, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, thanks for the feedback. Great feedback from everybody. And I'm looking forward to taking it back and then seeing how we can, take the great feedback and present it back to you at the next stage. So, we heard loud and clear about the corner, the pops, the granularity of the courtyard. I think just really great feedback, and the challenge on sustainability too, of course. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. The only thing left to do is for the panel to take a vote, and I'm going to propose, given where it's come from, a vote of conditional approval for the project. But I'm wondering, and I'm in your hands, given the comments made regarding the public realm and the landscape, whether or not that warrants a vote of non-support at this time, because it's really important, and we really want to see that developed in much greater detail, given all of the comments that have been made. So that's something I'll put on the table for discussion. I'm not sure if anyone wishes to comment on that, but please do.
I
Yeah,
would actually
Betsy, please.
support conditional for both.
Okay.
Understanding the tight, it's a tight site, and I think that the response is along the lines with that. And I also think the team has absorbed the criticism really well. I mean, it's not really criticism, it's just sort of like, we're working with you to get this better. So what does everyone think about that?
Yeah, anyone else wish to comment on that, Pat?
I think conditional on both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Me too.
And with particular emphasis on environmental performance.
Right. Okay. All right. Anyone else wish to comment? Otherwise, I'll assume that that is a unanimous vote. Conditional approval for both. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thank you, Dermot and Scott and others. We look forward to the detailed design.
Thank you all very much. Good to see many of you, or all of you.
Thanks all.
Yes.
Thanks, Dermot. Thanks, Scott.
I'll have my coffee next time, Paul.
All right. Best holiday wishes to you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Same to everybody on the panel.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye, Scott. Bye, Dermot.
Thank you very
Bye,
much. Okay, Chris or Leon, I believe there's nothing else. We can adjourn the public session.
Yeah, and I don't think we have time to do the in-camera recap because some of us panel members have some other panel duties we're already late for. So
yep,
we'll have to just do it next time.
Okay, that's great. So this will end the formal public session. And again, wish everyone a good, safe holiday. Get that booster shot.
Yeah, have a good break, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Have
too.
some fantastic holidays.
Have a great holiday.
Bye-bye.
Have a great holiday.
Bye, guys.
Have a good
Ciao.
break. Bye, everyone.